Check, check.
Louder. Spit something, all right?
What do you mean? We just want to get you on some shows and, start building up your brand.
I told you I can be your manager.
That's why nobody knows you. Man, get yourself out there.
My cousin tells me that Richie's having a private event tonight.
Be there at 8.
Yo, Sid, come on, man. You left the door open.
Yo, let go of my shit! Sid, we got robbed, man.
Okay, yo, hold on. Go get the tracks, reach the show, boom.
You wouldn't know nothing about that.
About what?
Good music.
Really?
Yeah.
I wouldn't?
No.
Yo, let me hear.
I appreciate you rolling with me.
Richie vouches for me? I am in, bro.
If it's so good, then put it out, bro.
Yeah, whatever. Me and a million other rappers. This is how the industry works. You gotta pay your dues.
This is something for you. For them, it's just business.
I put everything into this.
So what? You chase some drink? You make the songs with this clown?
He doesn't know who you are.
I need to get to that event.
Even if it doesn't work out, at least I tried.
Hi everyone, welcome to Carolyn Talks. This is a YouTube channel / podcast where I, your host, Carolyn Hines, film culture critic and journalist, speak to film creators around the world about their work, the industry, and what inspires them. And today I'm very happy to be joined by the director and lead cast of the Canadian film Boxcutter. I'm joined by director Reza Dahya, actors Ashton James and Zoe Lewis to talk about their film, which premiered here in Toronto last November. I saw it at the Regent Park Film Festival there and it was great, and the film went on to screen at the South by Southwest Film Festival earlier this year, and I have to give props to them and the full and everyone involved with the film, because the film has a theatrical release right now in Toronto, which for an independent film unfortunately does not happen very often. So congratulations to them and to everyone involved with the film for just that feat alone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me on this extremely hot day in Toronto.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having us.
Yes. So my first question is going to be for you guys. So Boxcutter is directed by you and it's written by, I would call him your creative part, Chris Cromie, and because this is your third project together. Your other project is a short film called $5, and I believe you also worked on, is it Esha together? And so I wanted to ask you first about just creating a writing, basically a creative team with yourself and Chris, because that, I think, like a lot of filmmakers tend to want to write their own projects, especially for independent films. But you guys you have a team. So talk to me first about just like finding that synergy to say, you know what, I'll be the director and you be the writer, and this is how this is going to work.
Well, I would say that I just know that I'm not a writer, so I don't consider myself a writer. I don't have a writing credit in the film, so I've never really approached it as a writer in the first place. So Chris used to be a researcher, writer, on my radio show back in the days, and I didn't know that he was into writing scripts. And so when I went to him with an idea for a short film, he was able to write like a script, like a real script, beginning, middle, and end, characters, a storyline, the whole thing, character arcs. And I was like, wow, I didn't know that you could do that, And so it's kind of just been director-writer relationship kind of from there. Like I've never really pursued trying to be a writer,
What is it about writing that you think is trickier for you than directing?
I just don't have, I have a hard time with and this is kind of part of my artist journey too. Like I have a hard time if you give me like just a blank piece of paper, like I don't know what to do with it, some people take a blank piece of paper and they can just create a whole world, and that's just not my strength. That's why I also don't really do music videos, because I don't have the mind for just dreaming up kind of like visuals in that way. Like I'm into story. I need a script that I can mold and shape and design the way that I feel like connects with me as an artist, So I just kind of been realizing like what my strengths are over the years, as far as like what I'm good at in this kind of space of directing and filmmaking.
Okay, so we'll come back to that because I think that's actually kind of interesting, and it actually I think ties into a specific theme of artistry in Boxcutter. So for Zoe and Ashton, talk to me about getting cast in Boxcutter because you're both very young, but you both give very mature performances. I've seen you before, Ashton, in Revenge of the Black Best Friend. You both give a very, I think, very mature performance in this film. And there's a way to do a mature performance, but still keep it youthful and keep it applicable to the character that you're playing, you know, because these are two like young 20 something young people. And there's a sense of immaturity in both of them, but there's a sense of maturity in your performances. So, and that some people might hear me saying like, what is that? That doesn't make sense. It really does make sense. But first, Ashton, talk to me about the casting to play Broom and like how you became involved with the project.
Yeah, so I met Rez at the CFC, and we were creating these final shorts. Like we had to create like these character pieces, and we had to find directors. And Rez was one of the directors that they pitched me. And then he and I were talking about that short. And then during that process, he ended up sending me the script for Boxcutter. And I think I had read it and I really liked it. And then I had asked him, I was just like, at the time, which was like really hard to just be like, hey, you know, if you're ever doing this, I would love to like read for it and be a part of it. Because it felt like asking that in some way would feel like I was like, how do I say this, but like say that I want to read? I'm not like asking for the thing, you know? So I think I remember, I'm pretty sure I must have hit up my friends and be like, yo, how would you frame this email? And like, we crafted the email together. But you know, I hit him up and he was interested in the idea. So when it came back around, I remember I also met Soko while I was at the CFC, and at the CFC barbecue, I seen her and I heard she was producing. So I was like, yo, I gotta tell her too. So I was like, yo, I heard you're producing this thing. I wanna read for it. And she was like, I feel like I seen a tape. And I was like, oh no, that wasn't good. I'll do it again. So, you know, it was just like it started from way back then. And then now when it finally came back around, just, you know, the regular process, you know, my agent sent it to me and then just put it on tape, and it all kind of took its steps to getting the part.
Kind of almost sounds like what Rome did, you know, when he was trying to do this whole thing, going in the
I
club
know, right?
again, but you know, like it's kind of almost similar. Like, so I heard that you know someone who can help you get into this space, like get me this audition.
For sure.
And for you, Zoe, how did you become involved with the project?
I would say for myself, like I honestly like I always tell this story for Rez. I was actually gonna stop acting right before I auditioned for the role. I think like after I auditioned, I was gonna just like focus on my music mainly because I'm a singer and a songwriter at heart. But I auditioned for like the last round of the film, and then I found out that I got the part like a day before my birthday when I was in Miami visiting family, and then kind of just all kind of came together from there. And then like I'd say also to my experience as well after getting the part and then doing my callback and having my chemistry read with Ashton, like it super just showed me. I was like, okay, like you know what? Maybe I'm not done acting. Let me just continue and just endure through it and just you know just keep putting myself out there. So yeah, that's what I would say was.
Okay, why were you thinking of quitting acting? And I ask this because there's a lot of people who transition from being musicians to being actors. There's not many I can think of who went from acting to focus on music.
So, like, yeah, no, for myself, like I had always been a singer first. I've been doing music like my whole life, and then acting is something that I've done a while too. Like I was also in like Saint Antigone, like a fringe festival, like theater and stuff, and like just different like small projects here and there. But I kind of just wanted to lock in. Like, I felt like I was auditioning a lot. I wasn't getting any parts, and I was like, okay, like maybe this isn't for me. So that's really why I was like, let me just throw in the towel with acting and just go full 100%, like all of my attention and energy to music. And then it's almost like that, like kind of push pull, where like the moment you're done with something is the moment it wants you. So, and it was a good opportunity. So I was like, okay, you know what? I guess I'm not done with acting. But at the time, like I was over it. I won't lie. Like I was like, I'm auditioning a lot. I'm not booking. I'm like, okay, like I'm kind of done. But yeah, that was kind of my process at the time before I got the role and everything. So.
And I get that because the Toronto film industry is very tricky. And let's keep it honest, it can be very tricky for people of color, especially for black women, you know, because like there's very specific shows and films that are made in Toronto, and there aren't that many roles being written for dark skinned young black women, you know, especially if they're stereotypical. So I totally feel you on that. But then like look how Holding On came, because not only did you get Boxcutter, but you have another film. I haven't been able to see it yet, but you have film Morningside that you're in that came after that. So perseverance is exhausting, but it usually does pay off. I think I kind of find it funny, but like the character Rome, like he's this musician, he's this aspiring rapper, so sure of his art, you know, he's so sure that he can make these beats. Like it's so here how music is now considered beats, when before it was tunes back in, well, I say back in my day because I'm 41 now. But it was tunes, you know, making tunes, now they say beats. But he's so sure of his art, he's so sure of his craft and of his talent. But the things, and he's persevering and making it, he's working with all these different producers and all these different musicians. But the thing is like he doesn't have the surety in that appearance, which I think is a very interesting dichotomy with a character like this. So Rez, talk to me about working with Chris and like just figuring out who Rome page before, because you have to know who Rome is on the page before you know who Rome is as a living, breathing character through an actor. Because he's an interesting character, but talk about developing him on the page first.
Yeah, I think I don't know, it's just a feeling, you know, like I think it's like I said before, you know, like I can equate like my personal artist journey to Rome. I think Ashton's spoken about this a little bit too. You know, like this idea of being at an early stage of my career, kind of learning about what it means to, because you know, my background's in radio and in broadcasting and stuff like that. So like, you know, I was always talking about artists, playing music from artists, you know. So what does it mean now to be on the other side, and you know, what that feels like to be the person that is now trying to say something or release something into the world and being open to like criticism and, you know, being vulnerable in that way. And so I just feel like being in that kind of stage as far as being a creator, I was just kind of subconsciously maybe molding it in a certain way where Rome kind of felt that way as well. You know what I mean? So it's funny, we never really spoke about it in those specific terms, but it just kind of molded into that thing. And I think maybe feels the same way as far as sharing and being vulnerable too. So I think it's just something that was on our minds and like on our hearts, you know, just like how we felt as far as being creatives, you know.
And then talk about creating Janaea, because she and Rome are the same age. They grew up together. They're from the same neighborhood. They're both artists in their own way. But while his art comes out in spoken word, in rapping, in creating music, her art is in the visual. She's a photographer, you know, videographer. She sees the world in color. You know, she sees people. She wants to capture people. So I think it's interesting that they're both dealing with art but in two very different mediums. They're mediums that can relate to each other, because film doesn't work without music. Film doesn't work without a score. It doesn't work without, you know, a backing track, you know. But the thing is like you have a visual art without music. You don't need music to create. You don't need music to help people to understand a painting, a meal, you know. But you kind of need music to help people understand a film a little bit. So talk to me about making that a part of Janae's character. You know, she's kind of like the complement to Rome in a way that he doesn't understand.
Yeah, exactly. So like, you know, Janaea was kind of designed to be the, you know, like we speak about kind of like you know, antithesis and thesis, right? So like Rome, you know, when he starts his journey, he's in this antithesis space and he has to get to thesis, right? And so Janaea she represents what he's trying to aspire to be, right? Like she represents the other side, like the other side of the coin where you know, she's free, she's open to vulnerability, she's open to sharing, like she's not afraid, right? Now she's not right at everything. Like I think one of the great things about our film is no one's 100% right, no one's 100% wrong. But in that regard, like she's correct, right? But I think like for two men, like, you know, writing Janaea, I would actually say that on the page we didn't fully nail it. Like I would say that she was kind of one or two dimensional on the page. And it was honestly because of Zoe that she really came to life, you know, like that's why I was felt so lucky to find Zoe, because Zoe brought Zoe, like, you know what I'm saying? Like her element mixed with Janaea on the page created this beautiful, vibrant, you know, 4 dimensional character. And so I'm really grateful to you, Zoe, for kind of just showing up and bringing yourself to the role, you know, because you made it like a real character, you know what I mean? Like,
Thank you.
yeah.
Oh, that's so sweet, Rez. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of
You're
course.
so sweet.
So for you, Zoe, like how did you go about developing Janaea? Because yeah, you're a musician yourself, so you understand that artistic aspect of her. You understand like there's a lot of what she's saying to Rome is about in order to be successful, and not even just to be successful, in order to really grasp who you are as an artist, you got to put yourself out there, and you understand that as a musician, you have to first take that step. But the thing that I think that she really does is that she doesn't back down from Rome in that particular aspect, because she knows exactly who she is as an artist. She's like, I'm not gonna let you tell me who I am as an artist, because I already see myself. He can't get to that point yet, because he doesn't really understand that you gotta see how other people see you to accept who you are as an artist. Because like you can't create a painting and you keep it closed up. You keep it in a room, and the only person who sees it is you. But the thing is, you can't understand the full potential of a painting unless other people can see it. So for you, like talk about that aspect of Janaea. Like I relate a lot to her that way, because I had to learn how to be self-confident as a young dark-skinned Black woman.
I'll answer your question from two different aspects. Because one, like, as a dark-skinned, brown-skinned woman working in the entertainment industry, that as a whole is already its own that's a completely separate thing. And I feel like as a Black person alone, also just working in the entertainment industry, like, it's a very different experience. I feel like I'm very fortunate, though, to be in a very multicultural place like Toronto, and that like my first like major role was with like a predominantly BIPOC like crew, like cast crew, etc. Like my hair and my makeup, I wasn't really worried. Even my stylist, like it's all people of color, which is very welcoming, because that has been an issue for a long time within the entertainment industry, where we lack the representation for ourselves. We don't have people that know how to do our makeup or know how to do our hair or know how to cater to our needs, or so that I'm very fortunate and blessed to have been able to receive, both with like Boxcutter and Morningside. That's number one. I would say on a confidence note, I don't know. Like I think it's just a matter of really just being very loving and kind to myself, and allowing myself to just be very truthful about who I need to be and what I need to show up as. So I'd say, like, I hope that answers your first question.
It does. You have to, in any kind of, I think, industry where you have to put yourself out there. And as Black people, as people of color, like, we know we're going to be criticized, and we know that getting critiqued is part of life. You know, we go to school and we get critiqued and graded. We are at home, our parents tell us, you didn't clean your bedroom good enough. You know, our parents say, like, that's part of life. But when you're working in an industry where you're just like putting your heart and soul into this craft, like there's something that I think the film really touches on, is that is scary, you know, like it is extremely terrifying to put yourself out there to be judged by complete strangers, you know. And it's not only about whether they love or like your craft, they can love it but still find flaws in it. That's what I do. Like I was talking to someone about that recently. I'm like, I love a film. I can love film. Like I do what I do because I love film, but I love it enough to be honest about it. And I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about critiquing art, is like there is a difference. And I think that's what Janaea does for Rome. She critiques him and his art, and she's not criticizing because she's not putting him down. She's critiquing because she wants to build him up, and she wants him to be better and to trust his instincts and to trust in his own talent. And I think that's what the film is really about, like, because Janae, she critiques him from a place of love. She believes in Rome. She's coming from a place of love, but Rome is afraid. He's terrified of criticism, which is where a lot of his storyline comes from. But even then, she's not afraid to tell him what she thinks he needs to hear. You know, she's like, I believe in you. You have this gift. You have this talent. And for your music to be fully realized, you have to put yourself out there.
Ashton, talk about as just like as an actor playing a character like Rome, because that's something you understand about Rome, you know, about being afraid of
being criticized. And I imagine as an actor, you kind of related to that side of Rome because, like, you know, you have to do these audition tapes and sometimes you send them out and you don't ever get back a response, you know. So talk to me a bit about relating to Rome that way.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as an artist, it's difficult. Like it feels sometimes like it's such a fine balance of like some days I'm like, it doesn't matter what anyone says, I am like the best ever. And then there's days where I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing. So it's like I feel like internally I face those things myself that like when it comes to critique and criticism, it just depends on the day that they get you. And sometimes it's like if it's a day where I feel really good about myself and my work, then it's like only specific people that can give me the validation that I seek. Like sometimes if I do a tape and I'm like, yo, this tape is sick. And I send it to my friend, I'm like, yo, talk to me about this. Give me like, what do you think? But I'm just like hoping they just go, yo, this is tough. And then sometimes they're like, yeah, it's cool. And I'm like, yo, what are you talking about? Like, they need to send me straight to wardrobe. Like, this is sick. So it's, I don't know. But then there's also the part of it where you do a tape and you don't feel great about it. And you're like, yo, I'm like struggling between these two takes. Like, can you help me? I just want to send it off because I don't really care and I don't feel great. And then they're like, yo, this is amazing. So you're like always, I think, finding like different balances and it's always meeting you in different places at different times. I think it's a constant thing. It's always in motion. And I think for me, at least, I'm always going to be figuring it out. And sometimes I think last thing I'll say about it, like my main thing with like critique outside in the world sometimes is just not being able to have a conversation. You know, like I don't mind if someone is like, yo, this doesn't make any sense. It really sucks. But then like when I just have to take that in by itself and I can't go, yo, what about it didn't work for you? And they can actually tell me, then I'm just like left trying to figure out for myself what makes it bad or what doesn't make it good. Whereas to me, I don't mind the criticism. Sometimes I just want to have the conversation that comes with it. Because then, you know, when I create art, I have my own blind spots. You know, there's things that like I look back on that I've done that at the time I was like, this is amazing. And I look back at it a couple of years later and I'm like, oh, this wasn't as flawless as I thought. You know, but at the time I just didn't see it from a certain lens. So I just feel like it'd be nice in some way to have like conversations about it with people who don't connect to it. Whereas I feel like online, you don't really get that.
And for you, Rez, as a director, you have to give critique and criticism, and you have to do it in a professional way that uplifts and builds up your artists rather than tears them down.
So talk to me about balancing that as a director and figuring and learning over your course of your career, starting from your short films to where you are now with Boxcutter and everything. Like, how have you learned to develop that particular aspect of filmmaking as a skill?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think I would say that I've learned over the years that, and this is what I tried to implement on this film, and me and Ashton spoke about this a few times, was just like I'm approaching it like I don't have the answer. So it's not about critique. It's about like finding the thing. It's about finding the tone, finding the moment, you know? And so I think just showing up on set with that kind of attitude, it's never really about critique because there's no right or wrong, or it's not about me. It's about like what's happening in real life in front of the camera. So it's like if we can all play and we can just then we can find we can make it like we can attune it, you know what I mean? Like we can tune it, right? And that's what we did on set. Like we tried different things, we toned things up and down, and yeah, there's definitely takes where I might feel something or be like, oh, that was definitely it, especially because I've like lived with the script for so long and I've envisioned this movie like so many times in my head. So um but I don't think I ever approached it as far as like giving critiques. It was always like, yo, that was amazing, let's do this now, or let's do that now, and we just kind of kept it open like that.
How long was the script in development?
The script, we started the script in 2017. We did a table read in 2018. We did a public table read in 2019. And then, there was COVID, so that kind of held us back a couple years from pitching to telefilm and stuff like that. But I met Soko in 2020. So yeah, we just kind of went from there.
Yeah, so one of the reasons I'm asking these kind of questions is because I think the film actually speaks a lot to the creative process of getting a project made, whether it's a song, whether it's a film, whether it's even getting a book written. If you're an artist like Janaea, going from writing, creating your art in your iPad or on a sketchbook to getting a museum show.
It takes time, it takes years to get to that point. And I think one of the things that really makes the film very interesting is that you have people like Rome who don't quite understand that. He has his music and he immediately wants to perform at these big stages. He thinks like he can go on performances with established artists, like performing at like these massive concerts or at award shows. And his manager, Sid, played by Viphusan Vani, is telling him, no, you got to start small, Rome. You got to start at like college concerts, at small clubs, at these intimate spaces where people can get to know your name. You got to build your profile. You got to grow over time. But Rome, even in all his hesitation and all his fear and his anxiety, thinks like he's good enough to immediately rise to the top.
So I kind of find the film really does talk about the progress of the creative process of getting somewhere. It's about the journey.
And I want you guys to talk about that aspect of the film because like for Janaea, she has her art, and like we're finding out that she has this mural that she wants to make, and that she's excited about because she wants to show how she sees Toronto, she wants to show how she sees the city to people. And these murals, like we walk around downtown and we see them being built all around the condominiums, and they kind of supposed to project an image of what these buildings are supposed to represent. But she's learning there's a process to how this is done. You got to go to meetings. There's all of these concepts that she has to go through, all of these color schemes, and she's learning that what she envisions, what she sees, what she wants and desires isn't necessarily what the people hiring her want. It's not what the developers want. She's going to this meeting with this guy who's like the management of the building and the representative for the developers, and she's realizing, oh wait, my vision doesn't match theirs. And this is a process, and we're getting to see her learn what this process is. The business aspect of being an artist. It's not all just about passion and desire and artistic integrity. There's a business aspect to this. So I want you guys now to talk about the process, the point, the midway point of the idea, the vision, the creation, and the point where you get to be seen and have it heard and have it acknowledged and recognized.
Well, it's like you'll always hear artists say, it took 10 years to become an overnight success, like that's kind of like a common saying, so the idea, I think most artists know that there is quite a long process. It's the consumers that maybe don't always see that part of it. You know what I mean? I think these days you kind of see it more. I think younger kids now are more used to like seeing an artist just release music online every week, and you kind of watch them grow and you go to their first show and stuff like that. Whereas like back in the days, artists would be prepped by a label and then they'd come out and be like a big deal, and it's like they kind of could come out of nowhere in a sense, but they might have also had 10 years of prep before that too, right? So yeah, I think in our film, like one of our statements, kind of theme statements of the film is conquering your biggest fears starts with the smallest of steps. You know, like I wanted to make a film where like the big deal is like someone like starting an Instagram page, you know, like it's like how do you make that like kind of like a part of a character's arc or journey, you know? It's such a small thing. But I think for a lot of people that very, 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 very first step can be one of the more difficult steps, you know what I mean? So that's what we tried to show in our film at least.
And as Zoe, talk about how social media is now a part of the process. You know, like that is the part of the process of being seen and heard these days. Going on TikTok and or having an Instagram account or Twitter or
It's all Zoe, man.
all of
It's
these
all
different.
Zoe.
Let me, I'm ready for this one. I would say, like, as an artist today, honestly, with anything that you do, at least growing up in, like, this generation and being, like, a Gen Z, I don't even know, like, I don't even know, a Gen Z adult. Yeah, like, social media plays such a big role just in anything to do with entertainment nowadays, where it's, like, you have streamers like Kai Cenat down to, like, artists, like, I'm trying to think of, like, let's say like an artist that blew up on like TikTok or something, like the power of social media is so different. Or like back in the day, people didn't really rely on it to like become movie stars and to become really popular artists. Like for example, when Drake was coming up, I don't think he had like TikTok to like rely on to like make his fan base as big as it is. Where like it's two very different things. Like now the music industry is completely different, where a lot of artists will rely solely on their fans and the following that they have. But back in the day, it was very much like labels had the power where they were kind of creating stars to the same extent with like now as a producer or as a movie maker, you can go and make your own project and get people to watch it rather than solely needing to like completely rely on like a super big movie soundstage or production to do it for you. So that's kind of like it's a different world. It's a technology world, honestly.
Yo, Zoe, Drake had MySpace.
Drake had MySpace. Okay.
So like back then, right? Like a local, like say a pop-in like Toronto artist
Yeah.
might have like 30,000 plays on like their MySpace, you know, 50,000 plays on their MySpace,
Yeah.
right? And when we saw Drake's MySpace, he'd have like 1 million plays.
Drake had 1 million plays on his MySpace.
Yeah. So
Okay.
and that was the first time when it was like, oh, this kid is
Yeah,
like
like you kind of saw like he's gonna
this is
go.
different.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he had a huge fan base already because of Degrassi. So it's
Prior
like
to that, yeah.
so his play, so he had social media too. It was kind of the beginning, but you know what I
But
mean?
like the very beginning, like the early 2010s,
Yeah.
or like early 2000s. Yeah. But like definitely not to the extent that like people have today, where like they
No,
put
no.
their whole life on social media and like their fans basically follow their day by day. You know,
Yeah,
two
for
very.
sure.
I get what you're saying though. Like it's the same extent, but just more drastic nowadays.
Totally,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Before, like what you were saying, Rez, there was artist development. That's what it was called. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
artist
yeah,
development. They not only had to learn how to speak for like press conferences, people had media training. You
yeah.
know, they learned how to walk and talk and all how
Yeah.
to present
Perform.
themselves in
Yeah.
interviews. They learned how to dress. You know, they were like they developed the talent. Where now it's just like as like you were saying, Zoe, it's this instantaneous thing where like someone can become big overnight. But on like the 10 years to get to that overnight success, it can literally be from out of nowhere overnight. You know, someone just say something funny once and and it can get 1 million views or whatever, not even a million, like 2-3 million views on TikTok. And now everyone and people would say things like this should have their own show. But the thing is, one good joke does not make you a bona fide comedian. Okay. But that's the thing. Like like you have this one instance of success and people assume that you should have a career, an established career almost instantly. And Ashton, like Zoe talked about this social media and like all of that. What is your perspective on that? Because the thing that I thought was interesting is again, he and Roma and Jenny are the same age, but they have two completely different outlooks on how social media can be helpful. She sees Janaea sees social media as something that can build a career, whereas Rome, he saw social media as something that could bring his worst nightmares to life.
I feel him. Like if it was up to me, I wouldn't be on social media. Um, it's it feels like a double-edged sword nowadays. Like like acting, we know for certain that certain people are getting casted because of their social media following. But it's like, how do you organically get 1 million followers? Like you just can't, you know? So to me, I've always tried to view it as like I view a lot of these things as whether it matters or not, like because a lot of it sometimes we don't know for certain things, at least for social media we know it matters, but when I look at a lot of things I go, whether it matters or not, I rather have it if it does, instead of I don't have it and it does matter. So I think I just try to indulge into social media in a way that feels authentic to myself and it doesn't feel like I'm forcing something or I'm trying to pretend to be something. And I think that's like the only thing one can do. If Rome got Instagram, doesn't mean he'd have to engage with it in the ways that everyone was telling him to. He'd just have to figure out how to find his voice and figure out how to make it his. But then again, I don't have TikTok, and that's never happening. So like, can I really get at him? It's like TikTok feels so like it feels so confusing to me. And I'm just like, I'm too old. Like Instagram was the last social media. So now I'm like, I can't keep going. So like, if that's how he was feeling, I don't know if I can knock him. Kind of just have to go, all right, bro, like do you and hope for the best. As long as you're comfortable with whatever comes with not having said thing, if it matters, then if you can live with it, then rock out, do what you got to do.
No, and I relate to that because I did have a TikTok account and I haven't uploaded anything on it in like maybe 3 years because it was too much. I was like up Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Like I can't. One of them had to go.
Like I'll be like on my phone, I'm like, all right, let me go do something productive. And I'll like swipe up and I'll close all the apps. And 2 seconds later, I'm like reopening Instagram and I'm like, I just closed this. What am I doing? I actually have no purpose for coming back here. But like I think my body is just like so used to like hitting the button. And I'm just like, at some point you like that happens to you like one too many times in a day and you're just like, yo, what is going on with me? So, it all of it can feel like really toxic sometimes.
Yo, man, literally yesterday, I was walking Brixton, my dog, and there's this long stretch and I go for my phone, I put it back in my pocket, whatever. And then a few steps later, I want to go for my phone. And I'm like, bro, and I stopped myself and I said, I looked at the corner ahead of me. I was like, just get to the corner, just get to the next.
It's insane.
I'm like, yo, man, this is crazy. Like, what is going on?
Bro,
So,
I'll never forget.
I feel you
I'll
on that.
never forget. I remember I was in college and me and a couple friends were driving somewhere. And I'm gonna say her name. This girl, Kate. Kate, if you ever see this, I'll never forget this moment. We're in the car driving somewhere, and like I was in the back seat. My friend Zach was in the front, and Steven was in the back with me. And I'm just looking at the front, and like Kate is scrolling Instagram while she's driving on the highway. And I was like, yo, what are you doing? And she's like, oh, I don't know. And I was just like, yeah, we're like doomed. We're all doomed.
Yo,
and
that's
like
crazy. I don't know.
It just catches you sometimes, and you're just like, your body just goes like, yo, I need to do this thing that I do all the time. Not like realizing you're driving a car on the highway. So
Addiction.
It's insane. It's insane.
Rome knows, man. Rome knows.
He's onto something.
Yeah, Rome knows.
He's onto something.
And I legit had that experience yesterday morning walking my dog. I was walking her and I had to consciously tell myself, do not open your phone.
Yeah.
Do not. I heard the notifications and I said, no, Carolyn, just walk Yoko. Just walk her. You can look at your phone when you get home. But I had to consciously tell myself no. Yeah. And I was like, this is the problem. I'm like, I'm on the verge of it. Like we're so our phones, like I have my phone here because it has my notes, but our phones are we live with our phones in our hands.
Yeah.
A theme that I want to talk about in the film is the Rome and Janaea going from location to location looking for these beats, these songs, these producers that Rome has worked with. And he goes all the way from the West End up by Pearson Airport because that we know it's close because that plane is flying low. So it has to be close to the airport. He starts there and he's traversing all the way across Toronto, getting on the TTC, going to Regent Park, ending up all the way down by Yonge and Dundas, the busiest intersection in the entire city. And what I really love about this sequence is that they covered a pretty vast cross section of Toronto. You know, they went from the West End right to the heart of the city. And the thing is about Yonge and Dundas Square, that's not only the busiest intersection in the city, but it's a main tourist hub. You know, it's where people go to congregate. It's where all the bigger malls is, all of these big gigantic billboards are, you know, the digital billboards where films and TV shows and music is advertised. And it's here that Rome has to really confront his insecurities. And I think it was really interesting and I think kind of beautiful that they have what I would consider a pretty intimate moment where he lets Janaea listen to his music. You know, he gives her the earphones and he's like, I have to do this thing. I'm afraid that I'm not going to become a success. I'm afraid that no one is going to like my art, you know, and therefore if they don't like my art, they don't like me. And they're doing this not in a quiet space in like their bedroom or in a friend's house or even in a park. They're having it in the busiest intersection of Toronto. So Rez, talk to me about just decide, like you and Chris, like deciding this is where this part of their relationship, this development of who they are as these characters is going to happen. It could have happened anywhere along the track, but it happened in Yonge and Dundas Square amongst all of these strangers watching them, looking on.
Yeah. I mean, it's the belly of the beast, you know, like it's the center of the city. So we're getting to the center of Rome, you know, it's pretty literal metaphor, but you know, it works. And what I love actually about that scene the most though is that, like, you know, Rome is like, it's been so hard for Rome to like play his music for anyone and all this. And like in the background, you can hear a man just like singing his ass off, like just totally free, just singing in the streets. You know what I'm saying? And like he's there in the background of the audio if you really listen to it. And I just love that so much. I like, while Rome is like too scared, you know, there's someone literally just belting his heart out like on the street, you know, like next to him.
That person is living the dream that Rome is afraid to live, you know, like that person just putting it all out there. That's one thing I have to give like kudos to buskers.
That wasn't anything we planned, you know, it was just background like on the day. And when we were in the mixing suite, I made sure to keep it in because I was like, that's just so poetic that someone is just singing in the background, you know?
Yeah, because that person is doing what Rome is aching to do, but he can't, you know. But Ashton and Zoe, I want you to talk about that, performing that scene in Yonge and Dundas, because I actually kind of saw that scene as almost like a stage play of like, you know, like these two characters, they're literally just performing. You as actors are performing this particular scene on a live stage where you can't control the surroundings, you know, and so it's just you together. You have to trust your director. You have to trust all of the other crew is going to be there to protect you. So you have to be like, this is just the space that we're in. So talk about that scene. I kind of saw it as metaphorical for actors, like where you have to lock in on a scene and you can't be distracted by everything that's going on around you.
I would say for myself, filming that scene was honestly really interesting, especially because it was so busy at the time. It was so hot outside. I don't know. It kind of just felt like another day though, just on set, just filming. Because for me, especially going from like not being on a big production and like being like number one on the call sheet before, like filming that, I'm doing the same thing with like a bunch of people I don't personally know like that, like the crew and stuff, other than like my relationship with like Ashton or with like Rez or like Soko. So it kind of didn't feel too jarring to me. It was more just like not paying attention if there's like people staring at the camera and trying to like get in the shot and like do the most because they see that we're filming and be like, hey, like for like the camera or something, you know. But I would say aside from that, I would probably say that it didn't really feel like it was that much, honestly. It was more just the performance and me and like Ashton just kind of connecting with one another and doing that, you know. So because we were doing it throughout the whole production, I was performing for people I'm not close with and comfortable with, so it didn't feel that different, at least on my part. So, yeah.
For you, Ashton, like what was that scene like
Oh my goodness, what a nightmare. What a nightmare. Like, let me go back because I had this thought. I was like slowly getting back to like Rome's lawyer. And that guy who's singing at Young and Dundas, it's not what Rome wants to do. He doesn't want to sing at Young and Dundas. So,
That's true.
you know
That's
what I'm
true.
saying? Maybe that guy shouldn't have released his music. You know,
That's
maybe
true.
he should have
That's
held it
true.
in a little bit longer. And
That's
he wouldn't have been singing at Young and Dundas.
but he's singing, and that's the point.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. No, that scene in itself, that day in itself, once like we all know Young and Dundas, and it's loud, it has its smells, it has its sights, and when we got there that day to shoot, my senses just all kind of hit the fan. Like every single one was on, and I think I had a sensory overload, so I just remember I was like taking off layers of clothing because nothing felt comfortable. I felt so like I felt like in disarray in every aspect of my like being. So when we walked over to Young and Dundas, I don't know if you remember this, Rez, I was just like, get what you need and let us get out. Because I just I couldn't take the atmosphere and like the space. It was really bothering me. And then eventually I settled in. And I think just specifically about shooting that scene, you know, in some ways it forces you to drop in. Like it forces you to stand in front of someone, like you were saying, you know, in theater and go, this is real. I'm standing in the middle of this place. And if this was real life, this is what would be happening. People would be looking at us and going, what are the two of them doing? You know, so it kind of just like really forced me, at least, I don't know how Zoe felt, but it forced me to just be really present to the moment and like kind of lean into that discomfort. Because again, that discomfort also played into the scene in a way where it's like I'm like having to be seen in a way I don't necessarily want to be seen right now. So, you know, when people were looking at us and it all kind of just like mirrored the thing it is that we were doing itself. And then Rez cut the scene down a lot. So I was like, oh, that's great. You know, like you just took all this thing I was feeling and now you just cut it around. And that's, you know, so lovely. You love to see that. I'm kidding. I mean, he did, but I didn't have a problem with the cut, you know?
I mean, I think I cut Zoe's lines, I think.
Yeah, which made my lines, in my opinion, worse. I was like, what's going on, man? Like, I didn't like that at all. I was like, damn, bro, like, we're gonna be like, what the hell is he talking about? You know? But yeah, no, it was good.
Yeah, that was a lot of people were worried about that shoot, but it actually was quite smooth, all things considered. You know, there was a protest that came by that day too, which was
Right when we finished, so it's right when we brought
Another scene that I really want to talk about is the scene where Roma and Janae, they go to the development office to go to speak to the guy, I'm gonna call him like the real estate agent,
the marketing guy, yeah,
the marketing guy for the mural. And she has this beautiful painting of all these different women of different ethnicities, different races, different religious backgrounds, and she says, this is Toronto, this is how I see the city. And this man looks at her and says, but this is not what the developer want. You know, and like straight off, white people on this mural, because that's who they want to attract for this development. And the film, another underline in talking about developing and growing and, you know, art and all this stuff, the film, I think, is also talking about the gentrification of art. You know, how people want to take people's art and mold it into something that it's not meant to be, you know, to give it a message that it's that the creator does not have, you know. And the film is also talking about the diversity of Toronto. And this scene with Janaea, I think, encapsulates that a lot, where she's showing like, this is how I see Toronto, and this man is telling her, well, this is not what they want. And so I want you guys to talk about, you know, where you're existing. We've talked a bit, like for Zoe, we've talked about how the film industry in Toronto can be tricky, especially for dark-skinned Black women and for people of color in general. So I want us to talk, I think it's important to talk about how the film is very much about this, how Toronto is the most multicultural cities in the world, because you have people from literally every country, of every, and you have people who are looking the same, but this is not what we want. You know, and it's like, how can you say this is not what you want when this is the space you're in? So we need to talk about that, because I think it's important that we address that, because I always want people to, I always tell people Canada is not a utopia. And the reason I say that is because for people of color, there's so many challenges that we face in this country and in this city. And this part of Janaea's story is about that. These are the challenges that she's facing as someone who's like, you're telling me that the world that I see, the world I live in, isn't good enough to show to the people. You know, she's like, this, you're telling me the reflection of what I see isn't good enough. So I want you guys to talk about that. Yeah. I want you to go first, Zoe, because this is Janaea's art. I want you to go first, Zoe.
I would say that aspect, honestly, it's a very prevalent theme throughout the whole film, even with Rome, where he doesn't feel good enough to release his music. But like being in a city like Toronto and kind of just growing up in a place like that, and then that aspect as well. That's a good question, actually. I would say that it's a very interesting topic to just grapple with and discuss, because it's almost like, as an artist, it's like to each their own. Some people might love the city, some people may hate the city and say that it's like not very supportive at all, where other people have different experiences and are like, you know what, it might not be supportive sometimes, but I've experienced the support. So I feel like it's very dependent on your own personal experiences and what you've dealt with and what you've experienced and the people that you've moved with, because to the same extent, I don't know how Rez felt putting before like the movie came out to be, but like when he's going around shopping this idea to different people, it's like that culture aspect of it can also be a thing where like there's different stereotypes that play place, where like they think that because you're this person, you need to show up this way or you need to act a certain way, or if you don't, then it's like cliche or it's not reading how it's supposed to read. So I think it's a very interesting topic to grapple with, but I don't know. I don't know how to justify like a main answer for that, where it's like the perfect answer. You know, I feel like it's ever changing and it's always going to be something that everyone experiences differently. You know, like it's going to either be something where it's a good thing that people have, or bad experiences. So I don't know. I think it's something myself too. I'm still grappling with as like a new actor in the industry, and yeah, like a new actor in the industry, and just how I go about my experiences with different people and not taking things too personally or internalizing certain things. But it is hard, especially like being in such a multicultural place. Like each person experiences things differently, and each thing that I have, or my, like, I remember like when we were in South by, I said something to Rez and he was like, damn, you can't be jaded, you're so young. Like I have my own experiences where I kind of feel like that feeling of being told no, you can't do that, or you have to dress a certain way or act a certain way, is like very much pressed onto a person because of their ethnicity or their culture. So to each their own, honestly. Yeah, that's what I would say.
I think what I love about that scene too is that we cast a person of color as like the marketing person, you know, so like just like a subtle kind of way to say that, you know, just because you're, you know, you have brown skin or black skin or whatever, it doesn't mean you're racially sensitive or aware or intelligent or, you know, all the things. And just kind of like how complicated it gets, you know, whatever that word is, you know, just intersectionally, you know, between communities and, you know, the whole deal. So I love that we didn't go with the cliche, just like let's put a white person there as like the bad person, you know. I like I like the extra layer of complexity with the casting.
Mm-hmm. And for you, Ashton, because Rowan went and told Janaea, like, why you always got to be at war with people? And I, as a Black woman, I was like, because people always want to be at war with us. And I'm like, you know, like we always get told we talk too much, we talk too loud, we always get told these things. And like Janaea is coming from the perspective of a young Black woman, where she's like, I gotta speak up for me, I gotta speak up for my art, because if I don't do it, who else will? You know, who's gonna respect my art if I don't respect my art? You know. But talk about Rome, because in that moment I was like, Rome, you need to go have a chat with your mama about how like that's how I saw it, because it was like, because I've been told similar, like in Barbados where I'm from, there's a phrase we say, like, you always taking up people for your rage, and it's the same, it has the same context, where he was like asking, why you always at war with people, you know. And it's just like, because they're always coming at us first.
I mean, that's fair. That's fair. I don't know if I have a response for Rome there. And I think in like, connecting both questions, like in terms of the city in itself, for me at least, I feel like each character that they meet along the way represent different versions of the city to me. Like Jonathan, the marketing guy, represents that, like, to me at least, represents the version of the city that wouldn't necessarily connect to the movie. They would go, well, we're building, we're expanding. What are they mad at? We're trying to make it exclusive, da 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 da. Whereas like someone like Dell or Kev represent like the version of the city that I connect to, the two guys on Spadina. Like those are people that I know, that I see, that I feel. So I don't know. In some ways, it feels to me that Toronto is changing. It's becoming an interesting place for sure. I remember there's this film called Last Black Man in San Francisco, and a line in there is like, I think,
On the sub, on the bus.
on the bus where he goes, I think one of the girl goes like, "I hate this place" or whatever, and the lead character goes, "Ah, man, what did he?" I think he
goes,
said,
"You can't hate it unless
if you don't love it." Yeah, he says you can't hate it if you don't love it, and
something like that. Yeah.
yeah, and interestingly enough, Rez and I were talking about it. There's like a review on Letterboxd where someone was like, "This is like a love letter to Toronto, or maybe it's a breakup text."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh man, like I'd never thought about it in that way." But to me, it's like, you have so much feelings towards this place that you call home, and it's always gonna have its good and it's always gonna have its bad, and it's like you love it for like the pockets of the good that are within it. I look at Boxcutter and I love it for the Dells, the Kevs. I even love it for the Amaris, the Sids, because in some ways they make the experience where, like, in the harmful situations at least, there are some Sids that are a little dangerous, but in those experiences where it's harmless, it's like stories for me and my friends to laugh about. In some way, Rome is gonna talk about this day and he's going to like die. He's gonna laugh about it. It's like, yo, bro, remember when Sid like jammed my laptop? Like it's, you know what I'm saying? So in some ways, it's like the same negativity that connects to the city is in some ways the same light. Like Jonathan led Janaea to still build her mural. Yeah, they might have took it down the next day, but it was there. She got to express it. So yeah.
The important thing was that she got to make her art on her own terms. That's I think the beautiful thing. That's the beautiful aspect of the film. I think the film is about making your art on your own terms, and even if people tear it down, the point is that it existed. The point is that you were brave enough to show it, and we'll begin to wrap up on that note. But there's something that I'm super curious about, and I find for me when I watch films, there's always something that I'm always very super curious about, and it could be the most innocuous thing. And for me, in this case, it's Rome's shirt. I am so curious about the logos on this shirt because it has 3 yin and yang symbols, and I noticed that 2 of them are green side up, and 1 of them is green side down. And I was like, I'm like, there has to be a meaning, but of course, not all the time there's a meaning, but I'm curious about it. And because the yin and yang symbol is within every truth, there's a lie, and within every lie, there's a bit of truth, and like that's kind of like Toronto, like as you guys are all saying, like there's things about Toronto that we absolutely love, and then there's things about Toronto that we absolutely hate, But I was curious about this shirt.
Honestly, it was just.
He's about to say something very deep.
No, I'm not. It's just
so
fate.
deep.
It's just fate. It's just fate because like we got those t-shirts the day before our first shoot day, and we tried them on the morning of the first day of shooting, which is way too late. Like you're supposed to have your wardrobe set like a week or 2 before at least, right? And so we basically had a choice between 2 t-shirts in the morning, And we actually chose the other shirt. And then Ashton came out and he was like, I don't know. I'm like, all right, cool. Just put the black one on.
Yeah, this guy had me in like
And
it was
like
the craziest fit ever. Oh my goodness.
yeah. It was wild.
Purple
So,
shorts.
so it was just fate. And then once we started shooting, I was like, oh, of course it's the yin and yang shirt. It's Roman Janaea. It's like it's perfect. It's meant to be. You know what I mean? And then you can then interpolate much more from it. You can start to pull from it. You can use it in different ways. You can interpret it how you want to interpret it, right? So it was just kind of meant to be, I would say. And I got to shout out B Legends League, you know, is OG kind of Toronto artist, clothing designer, one of the greats that we have. You know, he hooked us up with some t-shirts and you know, just so grateful. So
Did he tell you what the the Mandarin characters on the back of it said? What it
oh
meant?
yeah. It says I love you, I miss you. What are you doing? ILUIMUWYD. It's letters.
Oh, they're letters. So it's like a text then.
Yeah,
So it's like
yeah.
shorthand, like text shorthand.
Yeah.
I was so curious about that shirt because every time I'm like, what does
Yeah.
it mean? Like, what does this shirt mean?
I love see you're a real movie head. I love that. Yeah, I love that.
I remember
I even have
we said we'd figure out like a deep meaning to tell people.
We did, right?
We're like,
Did
yo,
we?
you know, someone will ask, we'll figure something deep out.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys go, but thank you so much for
Thank
taking the
you.
time for talking with me about this film. I
Thank
really
you.
enjoyed it both times that I've seen it, and there's so many aspects of it. Of like just even talking about the specific locations that we could talk about. But I know you guys are busy. It's a super hot evening, and Zoe is a busy lady out there doing her thing. So I'm gonna let you guys go. Thank you so much for taking the time for speaking with me. And congratulations on the film and the theater release.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for
Thank
having us. It
you.
means a
Thank
lot.
you
Thank
so
you.
much for having us.